Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And look, here we are almost at the end of November 2021. You don't want to forget, I guess I sold them and shipped them out. My 3-book special for November 2021, U.S. orders only. Like Father, like Son on Clouds of Glory, The Elements Shall Melt with Fervent Heat, and The Meaning of the Method by Dan Derry, an exegesis of Acts chapter 1. Okay? If you purchased each one of these books separately, paid separate shipping on them, guess what? You would pay in excess of $60. But for the month of November 2021, U.S. orders only, total delivered price $39.95. It's a fantastic price. Saves you well over $20, okay? So go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com, and there's a wonderful banner right up at the very top of the page. Just click on it and order those books. And what you're going to see there in these books is some of the most definitive examinations of the nature and the definition of the coming of Christ in any book. And in the book by Dan Derry, which I was privileged to write a chapter for, you're going to find one of the best examinations of Acts chapter 1 that you're going to find anywhere. And so avail yourselves of this great, great book offer here as we close out November 2021. Good grief, can you believe this year is almost over? I mean, just stunning. I'm getting old. Yeah. I'm getting old. Okay, we are examining the return of the absent master. Virtually everyone agrees. Matthew 25:14 and following, return of the absent master. Acts chapter 1, the promise of the return of the absent master. And yet we are told that Acts chapter 1 is the fulfillment of Daniel chapter 7. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? If Acts chapter 1 is the fulfillment of Daniel chapter 7, then we're going to have to radically change our views in regard to what happened in Acts chapter 1. Because Daniel chapter 7, 13 and 14, the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven, as he came before the Ancient of Days, and thrones were set, and there was given unto the Son of Man a kingdom, the everlasting kingdom. Guess what? That occurs, according to Daniel 7, both in the vision and in the interpretation of the vision, that occurs at the time of the coming of the Son of Man in judgment. Now, unless you're willing to say, number one, that the little horn existed prior to the ascension of Acts chapter 1. Number two, that the little horn was persecuting the saints and prevailing against them prior to Acts chapter 1. And that the little horn, whoever that might have been, was judged and destroyed at the ascension, then guess what? The ascension is not the fulfillment of Daniel chapter 7. You can't argue that Daniel 7 is the fulfillment or is fulfilled in Acts chapter 1 without facing the consequences of the fact that Daniel 7 is a judgment context. Now, I've examined this, I begun examining this yesterday in the light of the passages in the New Testament in which the New Testament writers, by inspiration, give us the interpretation of the Old Testament prophecies of the coming of the Son of Man. Well, what is the ultimate Old Testament prophecy of the coming of the Son of Man? Daniel 7. So when the New Testament writers allude directly to Daniel chapter 7, how do they do so? Well, as we've already seen, Jesus applied the term Son of Man to himself to speak of his incarnation. He spoke of the Son of Man being crucified, buried, and raised from the dead. But he also, in numerous passages, spoke of his coming as the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven with the angels. And when he did so, it was invariably in a judgment context. There is not one single New Testament passage that uses the terminology of the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven with the angels, etc., that refers to his ascension in Acts chapter 1. Not one, ladies and gentlemen. And a whole lot of scholarship agrees with that. And so I began sharing with you some of the passages that use this terminology of the coming of the Son of Man. The second passage that I want to introduce is Matthew chapter 13. Look, I've got to tell you, when I was a really young guy and I began struggling with my eschatology, I tried really, really hard to hold on to Matthew chapter 13 as a, quote, end of time, end of the world passage. I mean, after all, good old King James is end of the world. And it's the resurrection. And it's the sending forth of the angels to gather the elect. I mean, my goodness, Matthew 13 is 1 Corinthians chapter 15. It's 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. It's Revelation. And I was going, see, Matthew chapter 13 has to be end of the world. And it does say end of the world after all. I thought. But of course I was wrong. When I began to examine the text, I saw that Jesus was speaking of the end of the age. Suntelia to aionion is one of the conjugations. The full consummation of the ages. That's amazing. That within itself changes everything. Well, I thought, okay, because after all, I believe that the gathering was at the full consummation of the Christian age, i.e. the end of the Christian age. And then, of course, I ran into the obstacle that says that the age of Christ, the age of the new covenant, the age of Messiah has no end. So that's a little bit of a problem. No, actually, that's a huge problem. If it's true that the age of Christ and the new covenant has no end, then you can't have Matthew 13 talking about the end of the Messianic age. Period. So there are a lot of problems. But notice this. I'm going to begin reading, and Jesus tells the parable of a man who went out to sow. He sowed seed here and there and what have you. And the wicked one, the devil, sowed tares among them. The servants discovered that, went to the master and said, do you want us to begin, separate the wheat from the tares? He said, no. Let both grow together until the time of the harvest. Now, listen, you have to understand right at this particular juncture that Jesus is implicitly talking about the fulfillment of the Feast of Sukkot. The Feast of Sukkot was the feast to celebrate the harvest, the ingathering, and it pointed to the ultimate eschatological ingathering. So in a Jewish context, speaking to a Jewish audience, Jesus mentions the ultimate ingathering, the ultimate harvest. They would have immediately thought of Sukkot. I got to hurry here. Okay. The disciples came to Jesus and said, explain to us the parable. And Jesus answered and said to them, the one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. Okay? Son of Man. The field is the world, cosmos. The good seeds are the sons of the kingdom. The tares are the wicked one. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the, not world, end of the age. The reapers are the angels. Therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of this age. Now, the term this age is not in many, many manuscripts, and I understand that. But he's living in the age that was to be harvested, was he not? If he was talking about the age to come, why did he not use harvest is at the end of the age to come? Why did he not say harvest is at the end of that age? But you see, he didn't do that. And yet we are constantly taught that's what he has in mind. Well, he wasn't living in the age to come. He was living in what the Jews called this age. And yet he was supposedly speaking of the Halam Haba, the age to come, i.e., the Christian age, the New Covenant age, the Messianic age. So again, the use of the terminology, while the term this age is not present in many manuscripts, obviously the translators felt justified in putting this age there. And even the word, when he uses the term this, it's not even in parentheses. So the translators felt that they had good reason for doing that. But I got to hurry. The Son of Man, here you go. The Son of Man will send out his angels. They will gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and those who practice lawlessness. Will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let the one who has ears to hear, let him hear. Now let me ask you, ladies and gentlemen, does anyone believe that this coming of the Son of Man with the angels took place in Acts chapter 1? Well, guess what is happening here? In Matthew chapter 13, you have the gathering and the harvest of the enemies. What is Daniel 7 predicting? The judgment of the enemy of God. What does Daniel 7 say? Talk about the reception of the kingdom. Oh, what is Matthew chapter 13? It's the reception of the kingdom by the saints of God. They're going to enter into the kingdom at this time of the judgment. And I've got to make this observation. Verse 43. Then when? The time of the harvest. Then when? The time of the coming of the Son of Man. Then shall the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a direct echo, allusion, citation of Daniel chapter 12, verse 3. Now watch this. Daniel chapter 12, verse 2 predicted the resurrection. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall arise, some to everlasting life, some to everlasting condemnation. Then the righteous will shine as the stars of the firmament. Verse 6, one angel asked another, when shall these things be? When shall these things be fulfilled? The other angel lifts his right hand and his left hand to heaven, swears by him who lives forever and ever, and says, it shall be for a time, times and a half time, and when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all, not some, not a few of these things, not even just one of these things, but all of these things must be fulfilled. So Daniel was told that the righteous shining forth in the kingdom at the time of the end, the time of the harvest, the time of the resurrection, would be when the power of the holy people was completely shattered. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that did not happen at the ascension of Christ. It happened when he came in judgment of Old Covenant Israel in AD 70. Here's what that means. If you're going to argue that Acts chapter 1 is the fulfillment of Daniel 7, then since Daniel chapter 7, is the coming of the Son of Man in the judgment and the harvest, then you've got to argue, that Matthew chapter 13 was fulfilled in Acts chapter 1, the time of the harvest and the judgment, the coming of the Son of Man with the angels, occurred in Acts chapter 1. But you know it didn't, don't you? Of course you do. There is therefore no way to say Acts chapter 1 was the fulfillment of Daniel chapter 7. And so we've got more. I will see you on the flip side.